The moment Eleanor Nash stepped onto that auction platform in Silver City, New Mexico territory, with her face bearing 3 cruel scars running from her left temple to her jawline, the crowd of men went silent as death itself. It was June of 1878, and the sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty Main Street, where a dozen desperate women stood waiting to be bid upon for marriage contracts. But Eleanor's appearance stopped the proceedings cold. Ryder Thompson stood at the back of the crowd, his weathered hands gripping the rail of the wooden platform that surrounded the town square. At 32 years old, he had spent the last decade building his ranch from nothing into something respectable. But the loneliness had become a weight too heavy to bear. He had ridden into town that morning with no real intention of bidding on anyone, just curiosity about what kind of women would subject themselves to such a degrading practice. But when he saw Eleanor, something shifted in his chest. The auctioneer, a portly man named Vernon Mills, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Now, gentlemen, this here is Eleanor Nash, age 24, come all the way from Missouri. She can read and write, cook, sew, and has experience with farm work." The silence stretched on. Eleanor stood perfectly still, her chin raised despite the obvious shame of her situation. Her dark hair was pulled back severely from her face, making the scars even more prominent. Her green eyes stared straight ahead, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. She wore a simple gray dress that had seen better days, and her hands were clasped so tightly in front of her that her knuckles had turned white. "Do I hear an opening bid?" Vernon asked, his voice lacking its usual enthusiasm. "Contract marriage, 5 years minimum, all legal and proper." More silence. Men shifted uncomfortably, some turning away. Ryder watched as Eleanor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He knew that look. It was the same expression he wore when he looked in the mirror, the face of someone who had learned to expect nothing good from the world. "Come now, gentlemen," Vernon tried again. "Strong, healthy woman here. She might not be a beauty queen, but she can work." Ryder felt anger flare in his gut at the man's words. Without thinking it through, without considering what he was doing, he raised his hand. $500. Every head in the crowd turned to look at him. Vernon's eyes widened. "Did you say 500, Mr. Thompson?" "I did." Ryder's voice was steady, though his heart hammered in his chest. $500 was a fortune for a marriage contract. Most went for 50 to 100 at most. For the first time, Eleanor's eyes found his. They were filled with confusion and something that might have been hope, quickly suppressed. Ryder held her gaze, trying to communicate something he did not fully understand himself. "Well, that is quite generous," Vernon stammered. "Do I hear 550? The crowd remained silent. No one was going to top that bid, especially not for a scarred woman. Vernon went through the formalities, calling for other bids twice more, but none came. Finally, he brought down his gavel. "Sold to Ryder Thompson for $500. The crowd dispersed quickly, moving on to the next woman. Ryder made his way to the payment table, where he counted out the money with hands that trembled slightly. It was most of what he had saved over the past 2 years. He would have to sell some cattle earlier than planned, would have to put off buying that new breeding bull. But looking at Eleanor as she stepped down from the platform, he knew he could not have done anything else. A clerk handed him the marriage contract papers. "You will need to see the judge within the week to make it official," the man said. "Contract is for 5 years, renewable by mutual consent. She is legally bound to stay with you and perform wifely duties, and you are bound to provide for her, protect her, and treat her with basic human decency. You break the contract terms, you forfeit your money and face legal penalties." Ryder nodded, tucking the papers into his vest pocket. He turned to find Eleanor standing a few feet away, her small canvas bag clutched in her hands. Up close, he could see that the scars were old, probably several years healed. They did nothing to diminish the fine bone structure of her face or the intelligence in her eyes. "Madam," he said, removing his hat, "I am Ryder Thompson. I have a ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Why?" The word came out harsh, almost accusatory. "Why would you pay so much for me?" He considered the question, trying to find an honest answer. "I do not rightly know," seemed like the thing to do. She stared at him, searching his face for something. "I am not going to be grateful. I am not going to pretend this is anything other than what it is. You bought me like livestock." "I suppose I did," Ryder acknowledged. "But I will tell you right now, I am not looking for gratitude. I am looking for someone to share the work of a ranch, maybe some company at the dinner table. That is all. That is all." Her voice dripped with skepticism. "You spent $500 for company at dinner. And someone to help with the chickens," he added, trying for levity. "I am terrible with chickens." She did not smile, but something in her expression softened fractionally. "I need to be clear about something, Mr. Thompson. These scars, they came from a man who said he loved me, my former fiancé back in Missouri. He was drunk and I displeased him somehow, and he took a knife to my face. Then he left me to bleed out in our barn. My father found me in time to save my life, but not in time to save my marriage prospects or my reputation. When my parents died of fever last winter, I had nothing and no one. This seemed preferable to starving. But I will tell you now, if you raise a hand to me, contract or no contract, I will find a way to end you." Ryder looked at her for a long moment, then held out his hand. "Ryder Thompson, I have never hit a woman and I do not plan to start. I take a drink maybe twice a year, and I am told I get quiet and sleepy when I do, not mean. My parents raised me to believe that any man who would strike someone weaker than himself is no man at all. You have my word on that, for what it is worth to you." Eleanor stared at his outstretched hand. Slowly, she shifted her bag to one arm and placed her hand in his. Her grip was firm, her palm calloused from work. "Eleanor Nash. I can cook, clean, sew, garden, handle chickens and most other livestock, do basic wound care and read well enough to keep account books. I cannot abide laziness, dishonesty, or cruelty. I have a sharp tongue when provoked, and I have been told I am too opinionated for a woman. I do not know if I will ever be able to trust a man again, but I will honor the terms of this contract." "That seems fair," Ryder said. He released her hand and gestured toward where his wagon waited at the edge of town. "We should get going. It is a decent ride to the ranch, and I would like to be there before dark." They walked through town together, an odd pair that drew curious stares. Ryder was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, despite the loneliness that haunted him. Eleanor was of medium height, slender, but with a wiriness that spoke of strength. She held herself rigidly, as if expecting attack from any quarter. The wagon was a sturdy affair, and Ryder helped Eleanor up onto the seat before climbing up himself. His two horses, Rocky and Sam, were fresh and ready to go. As they headed out of town, Ryder tried to think of something to say. He had never been much of a talker, and this situation was beyond anything he had ever imagined for himself. "The ranch is called the Rising T," he finally said as they left Silver City behind. "My father started it back in '65, right after the war. He died in '71, kicked by a horse. My mother followed him 6 months later. Her heart, the doctor said, but I think it was just broken. They were that kind of couple, the kind that does not do well apart." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "You have been running it alone for 7 years. I have had help here and there. There is an older fellow named Samuel Ortiz who works for me. Been with the ranch since my father's time. His wife, Maria, helps with the big jobs like branding and shearing. They have a little house on the property. Otherwise, it has just been me. What made you come to the auction today?" Ryder considered lying, giving some practical reason, but decided on honesty. "Loneliness, I suppose. The kind that gets into your bones. I would go days without speaking out loud except to the horses and the cattle. Started to feel like I was disappearing, like if I was not careful, I would just fade away and nobody would notice." "I know that feeling," Eleanor said softly. After her parents died, she had spent weeks in their small house, speaking to no one. The neighbors had avoided her, frightened by her scars or perhaps by the violence they represented. They rode in silence for a while, the wagon wheels creaking rhythmically. The New Mexico landscape stretched out around them, all red rock and scrub brush, with mountains purple in the distance. The sky was that particular shade of blue that seemed to exist nowhere else in the world. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. "Why did you come here?" Ryder asked. "To New Mexico, I mean. That is a long way from Missouri." "Distance," Eleanor replied. "I wanted to be as far from there as I could get. I took the train west, then a stagecoach. I was heading for California, actually, but I ran out of money in Silver City. Someone told me about the auction, said it was a way for women without means to secure a future. They made it sound almost respectable. Was it awful, the auction, I mean?" Eleanor turned to look at him, her green eyes sharp. "What do you think? Standing up there while men looked at you like cattle, judging your worth based on your face and body. Hearing the silence when you stepped up, knowing every single man there found you so repulsive they would not even make a token bid. Yes, Mr. Thompson, it was awful." "I did not find you repulsive," Ryder said quietly. "You pitied me." "No." He shook his head firmly. "I saw someone standing tall despite everything trying to push her down. I saw strength. And I saw someone who looked as lonely as I felt." Eleanor was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was rough with emotion. "Do not be kind to me. I do not know what to do with kindness anymore. Then I will try to just be decent instead. That is easier anyway." The ranch came into view as the sun was beginning to sink toward the horizon. It was a modest spread, but well maintained. The main house was built of adobe with a wooden porch, small but solid. There was a barn, a chicken coop, a stable, and several outbuildings. Corrals held a few dozen cattle and several horses. In the distance, Eleanor could see more cattle grazing. "It is not much," Ryder said, suddenly self-conscious. "But it is mine. Well, ours now, I suppose, at least for the duration of the contract." An older Mexican man emerged from the barn as they pulled up. He was probably in his 60s, with silver hair and a weathered face that spoke of a lifetime outdoors. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Eleanor, but he showed no other reaction to her scars. "Samuel," Ryder called out as he climbed down from the wagon. "This is Eleanor Nash. We were married today. Well, contract married. We will make it official with the judge next week." Samuel touched his hat brim respectfully. "Madam, welcome to the Rising Tea." "Thank you," Eleanor said, allowing Ryder to help her down from the wagon. Her legs were stiff from the long ride. "I will see to the horses," Samuel said. "You should show the lady inside, get her settled." Ryder grabbed Eleanor's bag and led her up the porch steps. The door was not locked. Inside, the house was simply furnished but clean. There was a main room that served as kitchen and living space, with a fireplace, a table with 4 chairs, a cook stove, and some shelves with dishes and supplies. 2 doors led to what Eleanor assumed were bedrooms. "The bigger bedroom is through there," Ryder said, pointing to the door on the right. "That will be yours. I will take the smaller one." Eleanor looked at him in surprise. "The contract says I am to perform wifely duties." "The contract says a lot of things," Ryder replied, setting her bag down. "But I figure actual marriage is something that should be chosen, not bought. You will have your room, I will have mine. If that changes someday, it will be because we both want it to, not because a piece of paper says so." Eleanor felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. It felt almost like hope, and she quickly crushed it down. "You really did spend $500 for help with chickens." "They are very difficult chickens," Ryder said seriously, "quite temperamental." This time, Eleanor did smile, just a small quirk of her lips, but it was there. "I should start dinner. What do you usually eat?" "Whatever is easiest. Beans, salt pork, cornbread. I am not much of a cook." Eleanor set down her bag and looked around the kitchen area. It was obvious a man had been living alone here. Everything was functional but without any sense of comfort or care. "Do you have vegetables? Onions, potatoes, anything like that?" "There is a root cellar out back. Some potatoes, I think. Maybe some dried peppers and onions." "Show me." Over the next hour, Eleanor familiarized herself with the kitchen and its supplies. Ryder had the basics, but little else. Still, she managed to put together a simple but decent meal of fried potatoes with onions and peppers, beans seasoned with some dried meat she found, and fresh cornbread. They ate at the table as the last light faded from the sky. "This is the best meal I have had in years," Ryder said honestly. "I did not realize how much I had been just eating to survive rather than enjoying food. It is nothing fancy. It is a real meal cooked with care. That makes it fancy enough for me." After dinner, Eleanor insisted on washing the dishes despite the long day. Ryder dried them and put them away, and they worked in companionable silence. When they were done, he showed her around the house more thoroughly, pointing out where things were kept, how to work the stove damper, where the extra blankets were stored. "I will draw you some water for washing up," he said, hauling in a bucket from the well outside. "There is a screen in your room you can change behind. I will be outside checking on the stock for a bit." Eleanor nodded, grateful for the privacy. She carried the water to her new room and looked around. It was simple but not uncomfortable. A bed with a real mattress, a dresser, a chair, a small table with a basin and pitcher, a trunk for storage. The window looked out over the ranch yard. It was more than she had dared hope for. She undressed slowly, examining the scars on her face in the small mirror above the dresser. The 3 lines were raised and slightly darker than her surrounding skin. They would never fade completely. She would carry them for the rest of her life, a permanent reminder of the worst night of her life. James Bradshaw had done this to her, the man who had sworn to love her, who had asked her father for her hand in marriage. One night of drinking, one moment of rage over something she could not even remember, and he had changed her life forever. Eleanor washed away the day's dust and changed into her nightgown. She was exhausted but did not think she could sleep. Too much had changed, too quickly. This morning she had woken up in a crowded boarding house, sharing a room with 5 other women headed for the auction. Now she was on a ranch in the middle of nowhere, legally bound to a man she had met only hours ago. But Ryder Thompson had not looked at her with disgust. He had not leered or made crude comments. He had offered her a separate bedroom and treated her with basic respect. It was more than she had expected, but she knew better than to trust it. Men could seem kind at first. James had been kind once too. She lay in bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night. Cattle lowing in the distance, the wind in the scrub brush, the creak of the house settling. Eventually, she heard Ryder come back inside, heard the sound of his door closing. Only then did she let herself relax slightly. The next morning, Eleanor woke before dawn, as was her habit. She dressed quickly and emerged from her room to find Ryder already up, building a fire in the stove. He looked surprised to see her. "You do not have to get up this early," he said. "Take some time to rest after yesterday." "I am used to early mornings," Eleanor replied. "What needs doing?" Thus began their routine. Eleanor took over the house and the chickens as Ryder had predicted. The chickens were not particularly difficult, but she let him believe they were. She also started a proper vegetable garden, discovering that the soil, with some work, could be quite productive. She cooked real meals, kept the house clean, and mended clothes that had been torn for months. Ryder worked from dawn until dusk on the ranch, repairing fences, moving cattle, training horses, and handling the 100 other tasks that came with running a spread. He was patient with the animals and fair with Samuel. He came in for meals dirty and tired, but always polite. He never raised his voice, never made demands, never tried to enter her room. At first, Eleanor remained wary, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But days turned into weeks and Ryder remained constant. He was quiet by nature, but when he spoke, it was with consideration. He asked her opinion on things, listened to her answers, and sometimes even took her advice. It was deeply foreign to her experience with men. They went into town together after a week to see the judge and make the marriage official. The judge was a stern-faced woman named Harriet Sullivan, one of the few female judges in the territory, who looked over their contract carefully. "You understand this is legally binding for a minimum of 5 years?" she asked Eleanor directly. "After that, you can choose to renew or separate, but for 5 years you are bound to this man." "I understand," Eleanor said. Judge Sullivan turned to Ryder. "And you understand you are legally responsible for her welfare. You must provide for her, protect her, and treat her with decency. You abuse her, you lose everything and face criminal charges." "I understand, Your Honor." The judge signed the papers and had them both sign as well. "Then, by the power vested in me by the New Mexico Territory, I declare you legally married. May you find more happiness than most who come through this particular process." She handed them their marriage certificate. Next, walking out of the courthouse, Eleanor felt strange. She was now Eleanor Thompson, at least on paper. Married to a man she barely knew, committed for 5 years minimum. It should have felt like a prison sentence, but somehow it did not. "We should stop by the general store," Ryder said as they walked toward the wagon. "Pick up some supplies, maybe some fabric if you want to make new curtains or a dress or anything." "I do not need anything fancy." "I know, but maybe you want something anyway. There is a difference." In the store, Eleanor found herself drawn to a bolt of blue fabric, a color that reminded her of the morning sky. She ran her fingers over it but did not take it down. Ryder noticed and quietly arranged for 3 yards to be added to their order, along with thread and new needles. On the ride back to the ranch, Eleanor said, "You did not have to do that, the fabric, I mean. I know, but I wanted you to have something that made you smile." "I did not smile. Your eyes did." Eleanor did not know what to say to that. She was discovering that Ryder Thompson saw more than most people, and she was not sure how she felt about being seen so clearly. Summer settled into its full heat, and the work on the ranch became harder but also more rewarding. Eleanor's garden flourished, providing fresh vegetables for the first time in years. The chickens proved to be excellent layers. She made cheese from the cow's milk and preserved vegetables for the winter ahead. The house began to feel less like a bachelor's shelter and more like a home. Samuel's wife, Maria, came by once a week to help with the heavier chores like laundry. She was a warm woman with kind eyes who never mentioned Eleanor's scars or the unusual nature of her marriage. Instead, she taught Eleanor about ranching in New Mexico, about which plants could be eaten or used for medicine, about how to predict the weather, about the history of the land. "My Samuel says Mr. Ryder is happier now," Maria mentioned one day as they hung sheets on the line. "He smiles more, talks more. For a long time after his parents died, he was like a ghost." Eleanor did not know what to say to that. She had noticed that Ryder did seem to be more relaxed as the weeks passed. He still worked hard, but there was less tension in his shoulders. Sometimes at dinner, he would tell her about his day, share stories about the ranch or the animals. Once, he even laughed at something she said, a real laugh that transformed his whole face. She found herself looking forward to those dinners, to the quiet conversations they would have as the day wound down. Ryder was surprisingly easy to talk to once you got past his natural reserve. He had opinions about things but did not force them on others. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it was usually worth hearing. One evening in late July, a terrible storm rolled in. The wind howled and rain hammered against the house. Lightning split the sky and thunder shook the walls. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, trying to mend a shirt by lamplight, when a particularly loud crack of thunder made her jump and drop the needle. "Are you all right?" Ryder asked from his chair by the fireplace, where he was going over account books. "Fine," Eleanor said, but her hands were shaking as she searched for the needle. Another flash of lightning, another boom of thunder. Eleanor stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. She could feel her heart racing, panic rising in her throat. The storm reminded her too much of that night, of thunder covering her screams, of lightning illuminating James's rage-twisted face. "Eleanor," Ryder was beside her, his voice gentle. "What do you need?" "I do not like storms," she managed to say. "They remind me of that night. Can I help?" What would make this easier? She did not know. She just knew she could not breathe properly, could not think straight. "Talk to me. Tell me something, anything. I need to focus on something other than the storm." Ryder guided her back to her chair and pulled his own chair close, though he was careful not to touch her without permission. Then he began to talk, his deep voice steady and calm. He told her about his childhood, about learning to ride before he could walk properly, about his mother teaching him to read from the family Bible, about his father's terrible singing voice that would make the horses whinny in protest. He talked about coming to New Mexico, about the first time he saw the landscape and felt like he had found where he belonged. He talked about the challenges of ranching, the satisfaction of seeing cattle thrive, the first time he successfully broke a horse to saddle by himself. Eleanor listened, focusing on his voice, on the stories that painted a picture of his life. Gradually, her breathing slowed. Her hands stopped shaking. The storm continued outside, but it seemed farther away somehow, less threatening. "I am sorry," she said when the worst of the storm had passed. "I should not have fallen apart like that." "Why not? We have all got things that shake us. Nothing wrong with needing help sometimes. You never seem shaken by anything." Ryder smiled slightly. "I jump at the sound of breaking glass. Reminds me of the day my mother collapsed. She was holding a jar of preserves and it shattered when she hit the floor. Now anytime I hear that sound, I am right back in that moment, watching her die and not being able to do anything about it." Eleanor looked at him with new understanding. "We are a pair, are we not? Both carrying our broken pieces. Maybe, or maybe we are both stronger than we think, still standing despite everything that tried to break us." Something shifted between them that night. A wall came down, a bridge was built. Eleanor found herself watching Ryder as he worked, admiring the economical grace of his movements, the patience he showed with difficult animals, the quiet competence with which he handled everything. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he was amused, the rare but beautiful smile that would sometimes cross his face, the gentleness in his calloused hands. She began to wonder what it would be like to trust him completely, to let him closer than arm's length, to admit that she was beginning to feel something that terrified her more than any storm. August brought brutal heat and the need for a cattle drive to move the herd to better grazing. Ryder would be gone for 3 days, and he was clearly worried about leaving Eleanor alone. "Samuel will be here during the day," he said for the 3rd time as he prepared to leave before dawn. "And you have got the rifle if you need it. If there is any trouble, any at all, you send Samuel for help." "I will be fine," Eleanor assured him. "I am not helpless. I know, I just worry." "Why?" The question came out before she could stop it. Ryder looked at her, his eyes serious in the pre-dawn darkness. "Because you matter to me. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a contract and started being real, at least for me." He left before she could respond, swinging up onto his horse and riding out with Samuel to gather the cattle. Eleanor stood on the porch, her heart pounding, watching until they disappeared into the early morning shadows. The first day alone was strange. Eleanor kept herself busy with chores, but the house felt empty without Ryder's presence. She had not realized how much space he filled simply by being there. That night, she lay in bed listening to the silence and admitting to herself what she had been denying for weeks. She was falling in love with her husband. The realization was terrifying. She had sworn never to let herself be vulnerable to a man again. Had promised herself she would keep her heart locked away where it could not be hurt. But Ryder had slipped past her defenses without even trying, simply by being decent and kind and steady. The second day, Eleanor was in the garden when she heard horses approaching. It was not yet time for Ryder to return. She straightened, shading her eyes against the sun, and saw 3 riders coming up the road. They were not ranch hands. Something about the way they sat their horses, the way they looked around, set her nerves on edge. She quickly made her way back to the house, heart pounding. Inside, she barred the door and retrieved the rifle from where Ryder kept it. She checked that it was loaded, then positioned herself by the window where she could see the front yard. The men dismounted and looked around. One of them called out, "Anyone home?" "We are just looking for some water and maybe a meal. We can pay." Eleanor said nothing, keeping the rifle ready. There was something wrong here. Honest travelers did not approach a ranch house like predators circling prey. One of the men tried the door and found it barred. "Come on now, we know someone is in there. We saw you in the garden. We are not here to cause trouble." Still, Eleanor remained silent. After a few minutes, the men gave up and rode away, but they did not go far. She could see them setting up camp about a quarter-mile down the road, close enough to keep watch on the ranch. Eleanor spent a tense night, the rifle across her lap, dozing fitfully in a chair. Every sound made her jump. She thought about riding for help, but she would have to pass the men's camp to reach town or any neighboring ranch. Better to stay fortified until Ryder returned. The next morning, the 3rd day, she saw dust in the distance and recognized Ryder and Samuel bringing the cattle back. Relief flooded through her. She also saw the 3 men notice the returning ranchers. They quickly broke camp and rode off in the opposite direction. When Ryder reached the house, Eleanor met him on the porch. He took one look at her face and immediately handed his horse's reins to Samuel. "What happened?" She told him about the men, about the night spent watching, about the feeling that they had been waiting for an opportunity. Ryder's face grew dark with anger, but his voice remained calm. "You did exactly right. Never open the door to strangers when you are alone. I do not care what they say. Were you able to see them well enough to describe them?" One was tall with a black beard. Another was short and stocky, no beard but a scar on his cheek. The third was average height, brown hair, needed a shave. Ryder nodded. I will talk to the sheriff next time I am in town. There has been trouble with drifters lately, men who lost everything in the financial panic back east and came west thinking to take what they need. He looked at her intently. I am sorry I was not here. You were doing your job. I managed. You did more than manage. You kept yourself safe and protected the ranch. He reached out as if to touch her face, then seemed to think better of it and dropped his hand. I was worried about you every mile of that drive. I was worried about you too, Eleanor admitted. They stood there on the porch, something unspoken hanging between them. Finally, Ryder said, I should get cleaned up. I imagine I smell like 3 days of cattle and dust. You do, Eleanor agreed, but she smiled when she said it. That night at dinner, Ryder said, I have been thinking. The contract says 5 years minimum, but it does not say we have to wait 5 years to decide if we want something more permanent, something real. Eleanor's hand stilled on her fork. What are you saying? I am saying that somewhere over these past 2 months, I stopped thinking of you as a contract wife and started thinking of you as just my wife, my partner, the person I want to come home to every day. And I am saying that if you ever felt even a fraction of the same, I would count myself the luckiest man alive. Ryder, Eleanor said, her voice shaking. I am damaged, scarred inside and out. I do not know if I can ever be what a wife should be, what a woman should be. You are exactly what you should be, strong and smart and capable, beautiful in the ways that matter. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Those scars do not define you, Eleanor. They are just part of your story, the same way my loneliness was part of mine. But we get to write new chapters now if we choose to. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes, the first she had allowed herself to shed in years. I am afraid. What if I let myself love you and you change? What if the kindness is just an act? It is not an act. This is who I am. I cannot promise I will never make mistakes or never frustrate you, because I am human and imperfect. But I can promise I will never intentionally hurt you, never raise a hand to you, never make you feel small or worthless. And I can promise that if you choose to trust me with your heart, I will guard it as carefully as I guard my own life. You really mean that? Every word. Eleanor stood up, and after a moment's hesitation, walked around the table to where Ryder sat. He stood as well, and they faced each other in the lamplight. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he raised his hand and gently traced one of the scars on her face. These prove you are a survivor, he said softly. They prove you are strong enough to keep going even when someone tried to destroy you. I think they are beautiful because they are part of you, and everything about you is beautiful to me. Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling the gentleness in his touch, so different from the violence that had created the scars. When she opened them again, she saw only honesty in Ryder's face. I think I am falling in love with you, she whispered, and it terrifies me. I am already in love with you, he replied. And I am terrified too, but I think maybe love is supposed to be a little scary because it means we have something real to lose. What do we do now? Whatever feels right to you. We take this at whatever pace you need. There is no rush, no pressure. We have time. Eleanor reached up and placed her hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady under her palm. What if I said I did not want separate bedrooms anymore? Then we would share one, whichever you prefer. What if I said I wanted you to kiss me? Ryder smiled, slow and warm. Then I would say I have been wanting to do that for weeks. He cupped her scarred cheek in his hand. May I? Yes. He kissed her softly, carefully, as if she were something precious that might break. Eleanor felt something inside her that had been frozen for years begin to thaw. She leaned into the kiss, into him, letting herself begin to trust. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. Wow, Eleanor said. Yeah, Ryder agreed. Wow. They stood there holding each other as the lamp burned low, neither wanting to break the spell of the moment. Finally, Ryder said, "Do you want to stay in your room tonight or would you like company? I am happy either way. I just want you comfortable." Eleanor thought about it. She was not ready for everything that sharing a bed could mean, but she also did not want to be alone. "Could we just sleep together? Just sleep, I mean. I am not ready for more, but I would like to not be alone." "That sounds perfect to me." They moved to Ryder's room, the larger of the two, and lay down together fully clothed on top of the covers. Ryder put one arm around Eleanor, and she rested her head on his chest. It felt strange and wonderful and safe. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and smell the scent of him, soap and leather and sun-warmed skin. "Tell me a story," she said sleepily, "like you did during the storm." So Ryder told her about the first horse he ever trained by himself, a stubborn bay gelding named Thunder, who had tested his patience for 3 solid months before finally accepting saddle and rider. His voice rumbled in his chest under her ear, a soothing sound that made her feel protected and cherished. Eleanor fell asleep like that, held safe in the arms of a man she was learning to trust, learning to love. When she woke in the morning, they were tangled together, and for the first time in years, she had slept through the night without nightmares. The next few weeks were a time of discovery and gentle courtship, strange though it was to court someone you were already married to. They held hands while walking around the ranch. They stole kisses in quiet moments. They slept in the same bed each night, gradually becoming comfortable with more closeness, more intimacy. Ryder continued to be patient, never pushing, always letting Eleanor set the pace. He seemed content with whatever she was willing to give, whether that was a kiss or just sitting together in comfortable silence. He made her feel desirable despite her scars, beautiful despite all the ways she had been told she was ruined. One evening in late September, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Eleanor said, "I want to tell you about James, about what happened." "You do not have to," Ryder said. "Your past is your own unless you choose to share it. I want to. I need you to understand why I am the way I am, why I struggle with trust." So she told him the whole story. About falling in love at 19 with James Bradshaw, the son of a neighboring farmer. About the courtship that had seemed so romantic, the engagement that had thrilled her parents. About how James had slowly begun to change after the engagement, becoming possessive, jealous, quick to anger. About the night he had been drinking, and she had innocently mentioned that another man had helped her carry supplies from town. About the rage that had transformed his face, the knife he had grabbed, the pain and terror and certainty that she was going to die. "I think part of me did die that night," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "The part that believed in happy endings, in good men, in being loved. When I survived, I was grateful to be alive but also felt like I was just going through the motions, like I was already a ghost." Ryder had listened without interruption, his hand holding hers tight. "Now," he said, "that man should have hanged for what he did to you. He would have, maybe, if my father had not been ill. By the time anyone could bring charges, James had fled to parts unknown. I do not know if he is alive or dead, and I do not care. I just know he took so much from me that night, and I am tired of letting him keep it." "What do you want to take back?" Eleanor turned to look at him, at this man who had shown her such patience and kindness. "Everything. My ability to trust, my belief in love, my future. I want it all back, and I want to build it with you. Then let us do that together." That night, Eleanor and Ryder became husband and wife in every sense. It was gentle and tender, with Ryder taking great care to make sure Eleanor felt safe and cherished. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Eleanor felt more whole than she had in years. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now. "I really, truly love you." "I love you too," Ryder replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Eleanor Thompson. Even with all my complications, especially with them, they make you who you are, and who you are is extraordinary." The fall passed in a haze of happiness. Eleanor could hardly believe this was her life now. She woke up each morning next to a man who loved her, spent her days working on a ranch that felt like home, and went to sleep each night feeling safe and valued. The nightmares that had plagued her for years became less frequent, and when they did come, Ryder was there to hold her until she calmed. They developed rituals and routines, the small intimacies that mark a real marriage. Morning coffee drunk together while watching the sunrise, Ryder's habit of kissing her forehead before heading out to work, Eleanor's practice of leaving little notes for him to find, silly observations or words of encouragement. The way they fit together in bed, her back to his chest, his arm around her waist. In October, they went into Silver City for supplies and ran into the auctioneer, Vernon Mills. The man looked Eleanor up and down with barely concealed surprise. "Mrs. Thompson, is it? You are looking well." "I am well," Eleanor replied, her chin high. "Very well indeed." Vernon turned to Ryder. "I will admit, Thompson, I thought you were crazy that day, paying so much for a contract marriage. But you look happy, both of you." "That is because we are," Ryder said, his hand firm on Eleanor's back. "Best investment I ever made, though I would not call my wife an investment. More like winning a lottery I did not know I had entered." Eleanor squeezed his hand, grateful for his defense of her, for the way he never let anyone diminish what they had together. Later, as they loaded supplies into the wagon, Eleanor said, "You know, if someone had told me 6 months ago that I would be happy, married to a rancher in New Mexico, I would have thought they were insane." "Life is funny that way," Ryder agreed. "The best things seem to come when we are not looking for them, when we are just trying to survive another day. I was barely surviving when I stepped onto that auction platform. I was one step away from giving up entirely." Ryder turned to her, his expression serious. "I am glad you did not give up. I am glad you kept going, kept surviving until you survived your way right into my life." "I am glad too," Eleanor said softly. "I am glad you saw past the scars to the person underneath. I am glad you were willing to take a chance on someone everyone else had written off. Their loss is my gain." Winter came to the New Mexico territory, bringing cold nights and occasional snow. The ranch work slowed somewhat, allowing Ryder and Eleanor more time together. They would sit by the fire in the evenings, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's presence. Eleanor taught Ryder to play cards and he taught her to whittle. They were small things, but they wove their lives together more tightly. On Christmas morning, Eleanor woke to find Ryder already up. He led her to the kitchen, where he had attempted to make breakfast. It was a disaster of burned eggs and smoking bacon, but Eleanor loved it because of the thought behind it. "I wanted to give you a morning to yourself," he explained sheepishly. "But I am reminded why you handle the cooking." "It is perfect," Eleanor said, kissing him. "Absolutely perfect." She gave him a new leather hat she had secretly commissioned from a craftsman in town, made to fit him perfectly. He gave her a locket, delicate gold engraved with both their initials, with a space inside for a photograph or lock of hair. "I thought you might like something to wear that shows the world you are taken," he said, as he fastened it around her neck. "And that reminds you, even when I am out on the range, that you are loved." Eleanor touched the locket, feeling its weight against her skin. "It is beautiful. You are beautiful, do you know that? Not just on the outside, though you are certainly handsome. But your heart, your soul, the way you see the world, it is all beautiful. I could say the same about you, Ryder replied. Inside and out, scars and all, you are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. They spent the day together, doing little but enjoying each other's company. Samuel and Maria came by in the afternoon with a pie Maria had made, and the four of them shared a meal and conversation. It was simple and perfect, and Eleanor felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. That night, curled up in bed with Ryder, Eleanor said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" "The contract says 5 years minimum. That deadline would be up in about 4.5 more years, but I do not want to wait that long to make this permanent. To make it real beyond just a legal contract." Ryder propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I want to renew our vows, but as a real marriage this time. Not a contract, not a business arrangement, but an actual choice we are both making. A commitment without an expiration date. Are you sure? You do not have to decide that now. I am sure. I love you, Ryder. I want to be your wife not because a contract says I have to be, but because I choose to be. Every day for the rest of my life." Ryder kissed her then, deep and passionate. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "Then let us do it. As soon as we can arrange it, let us get married properly in front of God and witnesses, and make promises we both mean with our whole hearts." They were married again in March of 1879, in a small ceremony at the Silver City Church. Maria and Samuel stood up with them, along with a few ranching neighbors who had become friends. Eleanor wore a new dress made from that blue fabric Ryder had bought her months ago, and she wore her scars openly, her hair pulled back so they were visible. Judge Sullivan performed the ceremony, and this time her stern face held the hint of a smile. "We do not often see contract marriages turn into real ones," she said. "But when we do, it restores my faith in humanity just a bit. Do you, Ryder Thompson, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse in sickness and health, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Ryder said firmly, his eyes never leaving Eleanor's face. "And do you, Eleanor Nash Thompson, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse in sickness and health, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Eleanor said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again. And this time, I actually believe you mean it." The small gathering laughed, and Ryder kissed his wife thoroughly, to much applause and a few good-natured catcalls. Afterward, they had a celebration at the ranch, with Maria's excellent cooking and fiddle music provided by one of the neighboring ranchers. Eleanor danced with her husband under the New Mexico stars, and for the first time since James had scarred her, she felt truly beautiful. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked as they swayed together. "That I am happy, genuinely, completely happy. I did not think I would ever feel this way again. You deserve this. You deserve every good thing. So do you." Spring brought new life to the ranch. The cattle had calved well over the winter, increasing their herd size substantially. Eleanor's garden was planted and already showing green shoots. The chickens were laying prolifically. Everything seemed touched with promise and possibility. One morning in late April, Eleanor woke feeling nauseous. She barely made it outside before being sick. Ryder found her on the porch, pale and shaking. "What is wrong? Are you ill? Should I ride for the doctor?" Eleanor looked up at him, realization dawning. "I do not think I need a doctor. I think I need a midwife." It took Ryder a moment to understand. When he did, his face transformed with joy. "You are with child." "I think so. I have been tired, and now this." Maria mentioned that morning sickness was how she knew with her first. Ryder whooped and swept her into his arms, spinning her around before remembering her condition and carefully setting her down. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby," Eleanor laughed, his joy infectious. A year ago, she had been standing on an auction block, certain her life was over. Now she was carrying the child of a man she loved, living a life she had never dared dream of. The change was almost too much to comprehend. Maria confirmed her suspicions and predicted the baby would arrive sometime in December. Eleanor had mixed feelings as her body changed. She was excited about the baby but also anxious. Would she be a good mother? What if something went wrong? What if the child inherited her tendency toward fear and distrust? Ryder was a constant source of reassurance. He read everything he could find about pregnancy and childbirth. He made sure Eleanor rested and ate well. He talked to the baby, his hand on her growing belly, telling stories about the ranch and promising to teach their child to ride and rope and appreciate a good sunset. "What if I mess this up?" Eleanor asked one night, her hand on her stomach. "What if I am too damaged to be a good mother?" "You are going to be an amazing mother," Ryder said firmly. "You are strong and loving, and you know what it means to survive difficult things. Our child will be lucky to have you." "Our child will be lucky to have both of us," Eleanor corrected. "You are going to be a wonderful father." "I hope so. I want to give our children everything I never had, not just material things, but a sense of being loved, being safe, being valued." "Children, how many are you planning for?" Ryder grinned. "As many as you are willing to give me." "I like the idea of a big family, the house full of noise and life. But we will take it one at a time." Summer was hot and uncomfortable for Eleanor in her pregnant state, but she refused to stop working entirely. She tended her garden, cared for the chickens, and kept the house, though Ryder and Maria both scolded her for not resting more. She felt happiest when she was busy, when she could see the results of her labor. In August, they had a scare when Eleanor fell on the porch steps. She was not seriously hurt, just bruised, but the terror she saw in Ryder's face as he found her on the ground was profound. "I am fine," she assured him as he carefully helped her up. "The baby is fine. I just missed a step." But Ryder insisted the doctor come out from town to examine her. The doctor, an elderly man named Harrison Shaw, confirmed that both mother and baby were healthy. "You are a lucky woman, Mrs. Thompson," he said. "You have a good man there. I have seen many husbands who would not bother with such care for a pregnant wife." "I know how lucky I am," Eleanor said, watching Ryder pace anxiously outside the window. "He is the best man I have ever known." After that, Ryder became even more protective. He insisted Eleanor rest more, do less. He even hired a girl from town, 16-year-old Sarah Mitchell, to come help with the housework 3 days a week. Eleanor protested but secretly appreciated the help as her belly grew larger and moving became more difficult. Fall arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the knowledge that the baby would arrive soon. Eleanor was nervous but also excited. She had prepared as much as she could, sewing tiny gowns and blankets, setting up a cradle in their bedroom that Ryder had carved himself from good pine wood. In early December, on a cold night with stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky, Eleanor woke to pain rippling across her belly. She lay still for a moment, timing the contractions, then shook Ryder awake. "It is time." Ryder was up instantly, pulling on clothes and boots. "I will get Maria and the midwife. Should I get the doctor too? Should I?" "Ryder." Eleanor caught his hand, squeezing it. "Breathe, we have time. This could take hours. Just get Maria and the midwife and then come back to me." He kissed her hard, his hand on her belly. "I love you. You can do this. I love you too. Now go." The next 12 hours were the longest of Eleanor's life. Labor was hard, painful, terrifying at times. But Maria was there, coaching her through it, and the midwife, a capable woman named Ruth Carter, knew exactly what to do. And Ryder was there, holding her hand, letting her squeeze hard enough to leave bruises, never leaving her side despite the midwife's suggestion that he might want to wait in the other room. "I am staying," he said firmly. "She needs me." Finally, as dawn broke on December 8, 1879, their son was born. He came into the world screaming his displeasure, red-faced and perfect. Ruth cleaned him quickly and placed him in Eleanor's arms. "You have a healthy boy," she announced. "Good lungs on him." Eleanor looked down at her son, at his tiny perfect fingers and the dark fuzz of hair on his head, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Ryder was crying, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and child. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I cannot believe we made him." "What should we call him?" Eleanor asked. They had discussed names but never fully decided. Now, looking at their son, Ryder said, "Robert. After my father. Robert Samuel Thompson, if that is all right with you." "Robert Samuel," Eleanor repeated. "I like it. Hello, Robbie. Welcome to the world." The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and wonder. Robert was a good baby, healthy and strong, though he had his father's lungs and was not shy about using them when hungry or wet, or simply wanting attention. Eleanor took to motherhood more naturally than she had expected, and Ryder was a devoted father from the first moment. Samuel and Maria were delighted to have a baby on the ranch, and Maria especially took pleasure in knitting tiny sweaters and teaching Eleanor the songs she had sung to her own children, long grown. Sarah came by often to help, cooing over baby Robert and proving surprisingly helpful with the household tasks that Eleanor struggled to manage while caring for a newborn. Christmas that year was special, their first as a family of 3. Robert was just over 2 weeks old, still tiny and perfect. They spent the day quietly, introducing their son to his first holiday, talking about all the Christmases to come. "Next year he will be walking," Ryder said, holding his son carefully, "getting into everything. And the year after that, probably talking non-stop," Eleanor added. "Asking questions constantly." "I cannot wait," Ryder said. "I cannot wait for all of it." The years that followed were full and rich. Robert grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determination. In 1881, they had a daughter, Emma Rose, who inherited Eleanor's green eyes and turned out to have a stubborn streak a mile wide. In 1883, another son arrived, Samuel James, named for the man who had been like family to them and in honor of Eleanor's father. The ranch prospered. Ryder proved to be as good a businessman as he was a rancher, and the Rising Tea became known for quality cattle. They hired more help as the operation expanded, but they never lost the family feeling of the place. Eleanor's scars faded somewhat with time but never disappeared. She wore them openly now, without shame, a reminder of what she had survived and how far she had come. On their 10th wedding anniversary, their real wedding anniversary, in March of 1889, Ryder and Eleanor stood on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Robert was 9, already showing promise as a horseman. Emma was 7, fearless and fierce. Samuel was 5, gentle-hearted and observant. "Do you ever think about that day?" Ryder asked, his arm around Eleanor's waist. "The auction?" "Sometimes," Eleanor admitted. "It seems like another life. Like it happened to someone else. I think about how close I came to not going that day. I almost talked myself out of it a dozen times. If I had stayed home, we would never have found each other. But you did not stay home. You were there when I needed you, even though neither of us knew it at the time. "Best $500 I ever spent," Ryder said, kissing her temple. "Though you are worth so much more than that." "You are worth everything to me," Eleanor replied. "You gave me back my life. You showed me that love does not have to hurt, that I could be safe and still be loved. You gave me a home, a family, a future. You gave me everything." "We gave it to each other," Ryder corrected. "I was dying of loneliness before you came. You saved me just as much as I might have saved you." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their land, over the life they had built together. Eleanor touched the locket she still wore every day, the one Ryder had given her that first Christmas. Inside now were tiny locks of hair from each of their children, and a small photograph of the two of them taken in Silver City. "Mama, Papa," Emma called from the yard. "Robert says he can rope the barn cat, but I said he cannot." "I can too," Robert protested. "Neither of you should be roping the barn cat," Eleanor called back. "Leave that poor animal alone." The children groaned but abandoned their game, moving on to something else. Ryder chuckled. "Never a dull moment with those three. Would you want it any other way?" "Not for anything in the world." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the auction block in Silver City to this porch, this man, this life. She had been broken and scared, certain she had nothing left to lose. But Ryder had seen past the scars to the woman beneath, had been willing to take a chance on someone everyone else had dismissed. And in doing so, he had given her the greatest gift imaginable. Not just a home or security, though those were wonderful. Not just children or prosperity, though she was grateful for both. He had given her back herself, had shown her that she was worthy of love, that her scars were just part of her story, not the entire book. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked, as he so often did. "That I love you," Eleanor said simply. "That I am grateful for every single day we have together. That I would go through everything again, all the pain and fear and heartbreak, if I knew it would lead me to you." "I love you too," Ryder said. "More than I could ever put into words." "You are my heart, Eleanor. You and our children, this life we have built. It is everything I never knew I needed." Inside the house, they heard Samuel begin to cry, probably tired and ready for bed. Emma and Robert were arguing about something, their voices rising. It was chaos and noise and mess, and it was absolutely perfect. "Come on," Eleanor said, taking Ryder's hand. "Our children need us." "They always need us," Ryder said with a grin, "but I would not have it any other way." They went inside together, into the warm light of home, into the life they had chosen and built and cherished. Behind them, the New Mexico night settled over the rising tea ranch, peaceful and still, the stars bearing witness to a love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. The years continued to pass in the way they do, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. In 1891, they had another daughter, Catherine Maria, named for Maria, who had been like a mother to Eleanor. By then, Robert was helping seriously with the ranch work, and Emma had discovered a talent for breaking horses that rivaled her father's. Samuel showed a love for books and learning that reminded Eleanor of herself. The ranch continued to prosper. They added more land, built a bigger barn, and hired several full-time hands. Ryder's reputation as a fair employer spread, and they never lacked for help when needed. Eleanor expanded her garden until it was the envy of the county, and she began selling preserves and vegetables in town, bringing in additional income. Samuel and Maria grew older, eventually retiring from active ranch work, though they remained in their little house on the property, beloved by all, especially the children who considered them grandparents. When Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1895, The whole county came to his funeral, testament to the respect he had earned in his lifetime. Maria followed him 2 years later, and Eleanor wept for the woman who had shown her such kindness when she needed it most. Robert grew into a fine young man, taking on more and more responsibility on the ranch. In 1898, at age 19, he married a schoolteacher named Alice from Silver City, and they built a house on the property. Ryder and Eleanor were delighted to have them close, and when their first grandchild arrived in 1899, a boy they named Ryder Thomas, Eleanor felt her heart might burst with joy. Emma proved to be more independent, eventually starting her own horse training business. She married a rancher named William from a neighboring spread in 1900, and their ranch became a partner operation with the Rising T. Samuel, true to his bookish nature, became a teacher in Silver City, though he came home every weekend without fail. He married late at 30, to a widow named Grace who had 2 children of her own. Catherine, the youngest, turned out to be the one most interested in actually running the Rising T. She had a head for business, and a way with cattle that impressed even her father. She never married, declaring that the ranch was her passion and her purpose, and she would not share it with anyone who did not love it as much as she did. In 1908, on a warm spring evening, Ryder and Eleanor sat on their porch as they had countless times before. Ryder was 62 now, his hair gone gray, his face lined with years of sun and wind. Eleanor was 54, her scars faded to silver lines, her hair streaked with white. They held hands as they always did, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Do you remember what you told me on that first day?" Eleanor asked. "You said you were terrible with chickens." Ryder laughed. "I did say that, did I not? It seemed like the only thing I could think to say. You were so beautiful standing there, even with fear in your eyes and those scars on your face. I just knew I could not let you go to anyone else. You saved my life that day." "We saved each other," Ryder said, as he always did. "I was half dead inside before you came. You brought me back to life." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling in for the night. In the distance, they could hear Catherine giving instructions to the hands for tomorrow's work. From the house Robert and Alice had built came the sound of children laughing. Emma and William were expected for dinner tomorrow, bringing their 3 children. Samuel would arrive Friday with Grace and the stepchildren. "We did well, did we not?" Eleanor said. "Built something real and lasting." "We did better than well," Ryder replied. "We built a legacy. But more than that, we built a love story, the kind people will tell their grandchildren about." "The rancher and the scarred woman from the auction block," Eleanor said with a smile. "It sounds like something from a dime novel. Except it is real. You are real, sitting here beside me. Our children and grandchildren are real. This life we built is real, and I am grateful for every single moment of it." Eleanor leaned her head on Ryder's shoulder, feeling the steady strength of him, unchanged despite the passing years. "I love you," she said. "I have loved you for 30 years, and I will love you for 30 more if we are lucky enough to have them." "I love you too," Ryder said, kissing the top of her head. "Every day, every moment. You are my heart, Eleanor Thompson. You always have been. From that first moment I saw you standing on that platform. You always will be." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they sat together, 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built something extraordinary from that chance meeting. The auction block that had held a scarred woman had also brought her to a lonely rancher who saw past the surface to the strong, beautiful soul beneath. He had bid everything he had, not just in money but in trust and hope and love. And in return, she had given him everything she was, all her strength and courage and fierce devotion. Together, they had healed each other's wounds, built a family, created a home, and proved that love could triumph over even the hardest circumstances. Their story would indeed be told for generations, passed down through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The story of how a lonely rancher found his heart on an auction block in Silver City, New Mexico, in the summer of 1878. How he saw beauty where others saw only scars, and how he bid everything he had for a chance at love, and how that chance became the greatest fortune either of them had ever known. Inside the house, Catherine called for them. "Mama, Papa, dinner is ready." Ryder stood, his joints protesting slightly, and offered his hand to Eleanor. She took it, as she had been taking it for 3 decades, and they walked inside together. Into the light and warmth of home, into the love they had built, into the life that had exceeded every dream either of them had dared to dream. Behind them, the New Mexico night settled soft and peaceful over the rising tea ranch. The same stars that had witnessed their first uncertain days together now looked down on a legacy of love, a family bound not just by blood, but by the example of 2 people who had refused to give up on each other or on hope. The auction block was long gone, torn down years ago and replaced by a proper market square. But its legacy lived on in the Thompson family, in the story that was told and retold, in the proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the darkest moments. All it takes is someone willing to see the light, even in the midst of shadows. Someone willing to bid everything for a chance at something real. Ryder Thompson had been that someone for Eleanor, and she, in turn, had been everything for him. Their love story, born from desperation and loneliness, had blossomed into something rare and precious. A testament to the power of kindness, the strength of commitment, and the transformative nature of love freely given and gratefully received. As they sat down to dinner with Catherine, surrounded by the life they had built, Eleanor caught Ryder's eye across the table. He smiled at her, that same smile that had reassured her on their first night together, that had comforted her through countless difficulties, that had celebrated every joy. She smiled back, her heart full to overflowing. This was what it meant to be truly loved, to be seen completely, scars and all, and cherished. To wake each day knowing you had a partner, someone who would stand beside you through whatever life brought. To build something together that would outlast you both. The lonely rancher had bid everything he had on an auction block 30 years ago. And every day since, he and Eleanor had proven that it was the best investment either of them could have made. Not an investment in property or convenience, but in each other. In love. In the life they would build together one day at a time until their days ran out. And when that time came, whenever it might be, they would face it as they had faced everything else. Together, hand in hand, hearts forever intertwined. For now, though, there was dinner to eat, a daughter to talk with, plans to make for tomorrow. There was life to live, love to share, joy to embrace. And they would do it all together as they always had, as they always would. The scarred woman and the lonely rancher, who had found in each other everything they had been searching for, and so much more than they had ever imagined possible. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their love everlasting. And it had all begun with a bid, a chance, a choice to see beyond the surface to the beautiful soul beneath. That was the greatest gift of all. Not the ranch or the children or the grandchildren or the years of happiness, wonderful as those were. The greatest gift was being truly known and truly loved despite, or perhaps because of, all the broken pieces that made them who they were. Together, Ryder and Eleanor Thompson had taken those broken pieces and built something whole and lasting. A love for the ages. A story worth telling. A life worth living. And they lived it, fully and completely, until their final days, which came many years later, still hand in hand, still devoted, still in love. The Rising Tea Ranch continues to this day, run by the Thompson descendants, a testament to what two people can build when they choose love over fear, hope over despair, and each other over everything else. The auction block is long forgotten by most. But the love it sparked, however unlikely, however improbable, burns on in the hearts of those who know the story. A reminder that sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances. That love can be found in the most unexpected places. That taking a chance on someone, really seeing them and choosing them, can change everything. Ryder Thompson saw Eleanor Nash on an auction platform and bid everything he had. But what he received in return was worth more than all the money in the world. He received a partner, a lover, a friend, a wife in every sense of the word. He received a family, a legacy, a life full of meaning and joy, and Eleanor received the same. A man who loved her, scars and all, a home that was truly hers, children who would never know the fear she had known. A future bright with possibility instead of dark with despair. They gave each other everything. And in doing so, they proved that love, real love, can heal even the deepest wounds and bridge even the widest chasms. Their story ends here, not with death or tragedy, but with fulfillment. With love realized, promises kept, dreams exceeded. With a family that carries on their legacy of choosing love, of seeing beyond the surface, of building something lasting from even the most unpromising beginnings. The lonely rancher bid everything he had for the scarred woman on the auction block. And together, they proved that everything was exactly the right amount to pay for a lifetime of love.